Well, greetings, seekers and life travelers, and welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, fulfillment, and lots of dog barks. Apparently, my dog is having an episode with a squirrel out there. Today is one of those days. Let me just have a second. I'll be right back. I'll try and quiet him down. Okay, that was fun. He's going to be less irritating because he'll be back in the background. So anyway, I apologize for that. Anyway, my name is David McLeod. I'm your life mastery coach. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about the amazing power of flow and how we can use it intentionally to really empower ourselves and our lives. So flow is a state of being in which we are fully present in whatever we're doing, which is why I think of it as presence in action. Of course, you can become fully present doing practices that seek to reduce activity to a minimum, such as meditation, for example. But what most people don't realize is that a very high level of presence can be achieved even when you are engaged in the most strenuous of activities. So in today's topic, we're going to go into a simple definition of flow. We're going to talk about some of the characteristics of the flow state. We're going to talk a little bit about active versus passive flow. And also, we're going to talk about how we can move intentionally into flow. So we're going to have a lot of fun in today's episode, as you've already seen with my fun little dog out there in the background. But I also know this because I've invited my good friend and colleague, Laina Orlando, to join us today. Now, Laina, inspired by her own spiritual awakening, Laina loves to simplify spirituality so it's easy to understand and practical to apply in everyday life. Her mantra is, life is fun and easy. So in my mind, Laina is a perfect example of what I would call an angel of flow. So please welcome my good friend, Laina, to our show today. Hi, Laina. Thank you so much for joining me again, and thanks for your patience with all the stuff that's going on here this morning.
Hey, if we're going to be talking about flow, we have to be it.
That's right. We have to allow ourselves to exist in whatever shows up, no matter what our intentions might be. And that's a beautiful thing to remind me of. And I know sometimes, I know myself, I get a little agitated with things, especially when they're not going exactly the way I want them to. And do you ever have that happen? And if so, how do you deal with it?
Oh my goodness, I used to be the queen of agitation. That being a perfectionist and being a parent with 3 kids and a job and a career that was one of those 24/7 careers because I was a realtor. I was always trying to control things, and inevitably life had other plans for me always. So things were always out of my control. And of course, I would get agitated and aggravated, and I would just be so upset about everything that was happening. And I would be so frustrated with the people that I couldn't control. I would be so frustrated with myself for letting things get out of control. But inevitably, all of that, once I gained the hindsight that one gains once you've been on the spiritual journey for a while, and I've been on it for 17 years, is that you begin to see that life was happening and my job was to be present to it. So it's what was happening. So I've learned through the years that I don't get agitated with what's happening because there's no point. It absolutely only changes who I'm being. And I don't want to change who I'm being after all this work to come to realize that I am the presence of awareness, aware of what is present in front of me. I don't want to give that up. So things don't agitate me anymore, but they did. They absolutely did. And if I begin to feel that energy of agitation arising, I just go inside and say, no, I'm not going to lose my ability to be present in this moment. Why would I give up my serenity if all I need to do is an internal reset?
So tell me a little bit more about what that internal reset looks like for you.
Well, it's very simple. in that it's just a feeling. You become resensitized in this journey. And when you become sensitized to what you are, which is just the energy of life flowing, moving, it's a movement. What source is, what life is it's a flow, forever expanding. So, but it wasn't easy to get to that place where it's so simple that I can just feel the energy moving. To be able to come to that place of feeling the energy of agitation moving required that I take a major inventory of the thoughts that I had, the beliefs that accompanied my agitation, because all of the beliefs that accompany agitation all had to do with fear. And every single one of them was based on manipulation of circumstances so that I get to be okay. Well, once I realized that energy that begins to move is trying to tell me that I'm not okay, that I should be afraid of the thing that's going out of control, the reset is very simple. It is nothing more than me saying to myself, am I going to give up my serenity and believe a thought that's not true, that I should be afraid that this somehow says there's something wrong with me because I didn't get here on time or this did not happen exactly as it should? No, this what's happening here doesn't define me. So the reset is a very quick questioning right now. What am I getting agitated about? What thought am I thinking? Well, then let me not think that thought, because if I'm not thinking that thought that this is going to define me, then that thought goes away. I come back. I come right back to be present.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting perspective for sure. And I know, I mean, I can speak for myself. I know that when I try to not think a thought, that doesn't make the thought go away for me. What I have to do is I have to find something else to focus my attention on. I have to transfer my focus to some other different thing. And I think that's really what we're talking about here in this. Life can happen all around us. Life can happen, and it can be pleasant or unpleasant, whatever it is. It just is what it is. And really, the words pleasant and unpleasant really have nothing to do with what life is about. They have everything to do with how we think about what life is about. So I think, you hit the nail on the head when you talk about trying to shift into a new way of thinking. And I like to try and do that too. I work on that all the time. What I found though, in terms of this idea of flow, is that very often people will say to me, well, just go with the flow, just surrender to what is. And something about that doesn't feel quite right to me, because if I just surrender to what is, then I'd never get anything done. I'd be simply flowing down the river, and it would take me wherever it wanted to take me. And, I couldn't even get out of the river and maybe have a picnic or something. So there's a little bit of it's not a contradiction so much, but I guess a conflict between two different ideas. I certainly recognize the importance of flowing with what is. And at the same time, I have my desires. I have the things that I want to bring into the world, the things that I want to create. And I'm sure the same is true for you. So the question is, how do we balance those two seemingly opposing energies so that they support us rather than sabotaging us or mixing us up?
Well, and that's the whole purpose of this journey is to come to a place where we live inside of a paradox, that there are things that we're here in the world to do, but at the same time, there's really nothing to do. There's nothing we can add to what is already so perfect. If we were not in this world, nothing would be missed. But yet, the fact that we're in this world, we're adding so much to it. So it's a beautiful paradox. And you were talking about, life is going to happen and it's either pleasant or unpleasant. To me, that's where it all begins, is that the pleasant or the unpleasant label, I'm the one who assigns it to what is happening. So when I say that, I shift out of the thought that is judging, I shift out of the unpleasant, it's very simple. And there is a necessary step of the shifting it to something else until you realize that something else is you just being yourself. So then there's really not so much a shift into what you are. There is a letting go of what you're not. So for example, for me, I'm the one that gets to experience what's happening. So if I label it unpleasant, I'm going to react. I'm going to have a visceral experience because unpleasant is the label that I'm giving to what is. It is what is. But instead of having to shift myself to being pleasant, if I no longer entertain that thought that this is unpleasant, if I don't think this is unpleasant, that thought has no power over me. It's my agreement with the thought that gives it power. If I don't agree with it, it goes. It cannot remain. It's impossible for that thought to remain. So there isn't a need to shift into feeling better. There is a recognition that feeling better is what remains when you're not choosing a thought that makes you feel bad. So I don't know if that makes sense, but the practice just gets simpler and simpler and simpler as we go. It's very complex in the beginning, but it does simplify as we go.
Well, I think it makes sense to you because you explained it. And I understand that if people aren't used to listening to this kind of talk, it may not necessarily resonate with their current thinking patterns. And I know myself, when I went through this whole shift to understand more about how we think and how we behave and the way we show up and so forth, there was a lot of ego mind stuff that would come in there and say, wait a minute, that's not true. My ego mind would pop up with all its arguments about why that couldn't possibly be so. And in fact, I think it's the ego mind that decides whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. If I identify with the ego mind, well, then I'm going to, as you say, I'm going to have that visceral experience of pleasantness or unpleasantness, depending on the label that I assign. So I think all of that makes perfect sense to me. And I still want to come back to one thing, and that is, it seems, I know I have this challenge. I cannot stop thinking a thought. The only thing I can do is redirect my focus to some other thought. That negative thought is going to stay there until I find something else to look at that is more in alignment with who I really am. I think that's what seems to be true for me. I cannot say that I have no ego mind. I doubt if that is true for anybody on this planet. But I know some people are better than others at getting the ego mind to quiet down. And that's something that I'm continually working on, continually exercising. So when a thought comes into my head, as long as I don't identify with the thought, that is to say, I don't think myself, I am that thought, then I still have an understanding that I'm merely having a thought. And as long as I'm merely having a thought, it's easier to let it go. That's what I have experienced in my life. Does that resonate for you?
Yes, I mean it's definitely part of the process, and the ego is nothing more than thoughts that are not in alignment with the truth of who we are. So the ego isn't something like separate. It's just thoughts in our mind, and once we become practiced at knowing the truth of who we are, we don't have to have untrue thoughts. So, for example, if you know that your name is David, so if I said to you, no, your name is Bob, and you begin to say, oh, maybe my name is Bob, how long do you think you would entertain that thought that your name is Bob when you know you are David? You won't spend a whole lot of time. You would say, I'm not Bob. That thought goes away because you're certain that you're David. So that's what the practice of recognizing that we are the presence of awareness. We are the point of awareness for life itself to experience this moment. When you know that, you have a thought that says this is not okay. Well, it's like me saying, I'm David. No, I'm not David. I don't have to argue with that thought. So in releasing that thought, all that is left is my presence. So really that's what that's the benefit of this practice, is the more you look at those thoughts and you recognize that they're not true for you. I'm not good enough. I'm not capable. I can't do it. I'm not lovable. I'm not whatever, because that's really what the ego is. The ego is a set of thinking that has us deny the wholeness of who we are. So once we accept our magnificence, you don't have to shift. I don't have to keep telling myself I'm magnificent, I'm wonderful, I'm whole and complete. I don't need to shift from I'm not okay to I am okay when you find that you are okay. So that step is no longer necessary once you return to embodying and feeling what you are. because there's no need to keep repeating to myself, I'm Laina. I know I'm Laina.
Right. Yeah, and what you said, there was a very, very important point in that. I think it's the thought we identify with. Mm-hmm. I've come to believe that my name is just some word that I use to help distinguish me, this particular bundle of life energy, from other forms of life energy, but I'm not really my name. And I'm not the thoughts I think. I'm not the beliefs I have. I'm not the roles I carry out in life. Those are just things I do or have as a result of who I really am. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing that most people don't really get, is you have to look into the who you really are part and understand that it's the who you really are that determines what shows up in your life, and how you bring your essence into the world. That's a very, very important point, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it's all part of the whole flow thing anyway.
It is. And to get to that place, so to me, this journey has obviously many faces, but it can all be boiled down into two. One is looking at those egoic thoughts that have us, that are the indoctrinated thoughts, the learned thoughts. It's everything that the outer world tells me who I am, what I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to have. So the bulk of the journey, the first half of the journey, I should say, is about looking at what we're not. And once, and it starts with our wounded self. It goes into childhood. It goes into the beliefs and perceptions that we pick up based on how we were treated. An immature child is creating an identity based on what others are doing or what others are saying. So we look at what we're not. We're not what other people think of us, and we're not our immature childish perceptions. So once that work is done, and we gently and lovingly allow ourselves to no longer be a victim of our circumstances in childhood, we then have to go to the place, well, who is the one who is saying I no longer am a victim of childhood experiences? Well, that one that can say I'm not a victim, that voice inside, is what the second half of the journey is about becoming familiar with. It's about building a relationship with our true essence, whatever we want to call it, our God essence, our soul, our spirit, our higher self, our oversoul. It doesn't matter what you want to call it, but there is a presence that has been there all along that we were not accessing when we were defending ourselves, protecting ourselves, living from our human identity and not our eternal soul spirit self. It's not even an identity. It's the essence of who we are. So once you make peace with that you're not your story, then we begin the relationship with the truth of who we are. And that's the one that can look at our entire life and see, oh, there was a flow. I was born over here. I grew up with these parents. This story happened to me. I let it define me this way. Then I got married and did this because of what I thought I was supposed to be, do, and have. And I had the kids, and I went through the divorce, and I went through the this, that, or the other. Then you begin to see that there was a beautiful flow to life, but the truth of who I am was not present, because my false self, my ego self, was busy using what was happening to either make itself, better or lesser than, using what was happening to define itself. And that's to me what the process of waking up is all about: becoming self-aware of what I'm not, and then aligning with what I am. That's why it's not so much shifting my thought to a positive thought. It's that the presence of who I am is neutral. It doesn't judge. And letting go of the judgment just returns you to that neutral place of being in the flow of what is.
Right. So you have one view of flow that I think is perfectly accurate and relevant. I mean, you're talking about the flow of life itself. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to get back to a different kind of flow, where this is the kind of flow that we can achieve in any given moment, not over a whole lifetime, but in a moment. The idea of being fully present in whatever we are doing. That is to say, being fully present and fully aware in this moment, no matter what activity I happen to be involved in.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of flow is something that was studied by oh my God, I think he was a Hungarian scientist, and I'm going to just butcher his name. His name was Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi or something like that. And he did a multi-year study on the whole subject of flow from a scientific perspective. And he looked at, well, what exactly is this flow? And his way of describing it came down to, you're in this state when you can say, I'm in the groove, or I'm in the zone. And so you can be very active. You can be doing something very strenuous, like riding a motorcycle or do skiing, or I don't know, think of any kind of an activity that you could be involved in. And the characteristics of this kind of flow have to do with intense, focused concentration. That is, all your attention is on the present moment and on the activity that you're engaged in. It also has to do with the merging of action and awareness. That is to say, you mentioned this yourself, that the I am and the I do are kind of one and the same. There's no distinction between them anymore. I'm no longer connected to that ego mind. My ego mind tends to disappear. When I'm also in that state, I have a very, very clear sense of my goals. I know that what my intention is, and I keep that intention on the experience in my awareness the whole time. So that's the kind of flow I'm talking about. And as I said, it's, you're there when you say, I'm in the groove, or I'm in the zone, So that's the question is now, how do we get there? How do we bring ourselves intentionally into that state? And that's really what I want to talk about.
Well, the being in the groove and the zone, and it is to be an appreciation of what is happening. Because, so for example, I was in France last fall, and I did something I've never done before that I used to be afraid of, and I went paragliding. And
sorry, you went what?
Paragliding.
Oh, okay.
So we literally jumped off of not jumped, we ran off of a mountain, and with our glider, and we were just gliding over this beautiful lake below in this incredible space. And I went in and out of being in the flow, because I used to have fears about that. And before I put the harness on and did everything that I had to do, I was so at peace, because I trust that what I am is eternal. So I don't have death fears anymore. But when I got on that, when we were in the air and there was no ground, then all of a sudden my ego began to kick up. Well, what if this thing falls? What if you fall out? Blah, blah, blah. And I had to do what you were saying. I had to focus my attention on my goal. My goal was to enjoy the experience. Right. The process was done in tandem. So I had a professional that was on right behind me, and I was sitting in a harness in front of him. And I had to shift my thinking to trusting my guide. And so it's no different trusting the guide that was a human versus trusting the inner guide, the voice of right. Soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it. So it is a very intentional process of deciding what is the experience that you want to get. People who are in the groove, I used to be a runner, and I would have those runner's highs all the time. I also am a gardener. I have those gardener highs all the time.
There you go.
I'm a cook. When I cook, I am in the zone. I'm chopping, and I'm
exactly.
Totally in the zone. So It is a very deliberate decision to focus my thinking on what is taking place in the moment, because you cannot be present if you're thinking, I got to finish chopping this because I got to go make a phone call. And once I got to do the phone call, I've got to get the email out, and I got to pay the bills. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to write about? All of that chatter is the distraction from being in the moment. Well, all of that chatter is what is typical for somebody who hasn't done the work of recognizing the ego thought that is constantly keeping us busy trying to become something. To be present, you got to know that you're already whole and complete. There's nothing to become. There's everything to be present to. So
Right.
instead of becoming, you're coming to just be in that moment.
Yeah.
It's very
Now
deliberate.
that's beautiful. And your description of this paragliding experience, what you described there, I think most people would see as a peak experience. It's something you don't do very often. You don't, I mean, I've had a number of these peak experiences in my life. And what I noticed about my peak experience is that I was fully present right through the entire experience, even in those moments when my ego mind was starting to bring chatter, because I was becoming aware of my ego mind. And I was allowing myself to say, okay, enough of that. I'm going to continue doing this. So I think you had the same kind of experience. When your ego mind started chattering, you became aware of it. And it was that awareness that happened right here, right now. It didn't happen yesterday or the day before or the next day. It happened right here, right now. And you were then able to redirect yourself and redirect your thinking because of the fact that you were in the flow. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful description that you gave, and I'm actually grateful that you brought it up, because all of us can have these peak experiences. All of us can create them in our lives. In fact, if you have that experience that you talked about, the paragliding, other people who are watching this may have had other experiences like skiing or racing a bike or doing. I mean, I don't care. It's something that really. And you can bring yourself back into that moment. Yes, it's a past experience for sure, but you can bring yourself back into that state as if it were happening right now and re-experience the energy of what it means to be in flow. And once you re-experience that energy of what it means to be in flow, now you can begin to bring that energy into all the other things that you do and say, this is how I want to be showing up. You also mentioned something very, very important at the start of your thing, and you talked about appreciation. And I think that is a vital key, and we're going to get into that in a moment. But did you have anything more you wanted to say about your peak experience or other experiences you've had that brought you right into that state of flow and presence in action?
Well, the only thing that I would want to add is that when I was able to just, not agree with these thoughts that were wanting to distract me from being present in the moment, once that happened and my mind went back to being quiet and I was just present to the fact that I was in space, it gave me the opportunity to feel what it's like to be in consciousness, because we're all appearing in consciousness. We're all inside of something. That's what this oneness is all about. So inside of that consciousness, what I began to feel was the spaciousness of me inside of the whole universe. What was so profound about that is because instead of having that experience just in a peak moment, I can have that experience right now. In the whole of the universe, you and I are having this experience. We're floating right here, right now, in this moment. Right. When I'm chopping onions, I am floating inside of all of consciousness, having that moment. So it really became a wonderful opportunity for me to realize that to label something a peak experience, like climbing Mount Everest. I have a friend who does that. And he says the same thing, whether he is up there climbing the mountain or he is at home paying his taxes, that the one that experiences whatever that is happening is the one that we want to be aware of, because we don't need something unusual to be able to get present. But it's in those unusual times that we can have the moment of awareness that there is an aspect of us that can be at peace, can be enjoying whatever it is that's happening and flowing with that. So it really is about bringing that into everyday life is what makes life fun and easy. That mantra is there for a reason. It's right. Because of the work that I've done that allows all of life moments to be peak moments, because it's the appreciation of, I get to do this with you today. After this, I get to coach a client. After this, I get to go teach a class. After this, I get to go to bed. After that, I get to wake up. So it's that appreciation for all of it that allows me
Right.
to no longer be resisting or fighting or judging whatever is happening.
So okay, this is beautiful and lots of great stuff, and I'm very excited about it all. But there's a couple of points I just want to kind of tease out here.
Sure.
The first, well, maybe it wasn't the first, but it was one that I heard was you don't have to have an unusual experience in order to have a peak experience. And I 100% agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I brought it up is that many people may have difficulty understanding what this whole notion of flow is all about. And so I use the word peak experience because that most people understand what that means.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's really important here is to recognize that a peak experience doesn't have to be a, quote, positive, unquote, experience.
Mm-hmm.
It could be something that that you would never in a million years choose to do. For example, a car accident.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I doubt if anybody would say, today I'm going to go out and have a car accident, and boy, I'm really looking forward to it. No, except maybe stunt drivers. Stunt drivers, they might do that. But real ordinary folks like you and me, Well, I had such an accident. And what was interesting to me about that accident, it happened in 2013. What's real interesting to me is that I was totally present and aware for the entire process.
Yeah.
It may have only lasted 10 or 15 seconds total time. But in my mind, it lasted a lifetime. It just seemed to go forever. And that's one of the other qualities of being in the flow, by the way, is time seems to stretch out. It's like it almost stops. And so, no, I mean, I had the accident, the car was totaled, but I came out totally fine, with a minor bruise. But what I got out of that accident was a greater awareness of how important it is for me to deliver my message. Because I had been, the accident happened because I fell asleep on the road. Man, what a great metaphor for my life.
Yeah.
I had been falling asleep in life and not doing what I was supposed to be doing. And this was my wake-up call. Now, again, not something that I would voluntarily go out and do again, but absolutely a peak experience and something that brought me right back into the present moment, full present awareness, and helped me to see more clearly what I'm supposed to be doing. So we can have peak experiences everywhere, anywhere, all the time if we choose. So I think it's beautiful that you brought that up. And so thank you for that.
Oh, totally. Totally. The peak part to me is just, am I present to it? That's what it is. And most people only give themselves permission to be present to something that is unusual. And that's, the waking up process is letting every ordinary moment be a marvelous experience, because we only have memory of this lifetime now, in this lifetime. The system is designed that we don't remember other lives, not really overall, so that we can be fully immersed in this one. But we're so busy trying to get away from this life that we got to go have a peak experience that we actually are missing out on the ordinariness that is the essence of what life is about. That's what we came here to flow with.
Yeah. Now, isn't that interesting? I mean, you just said something very profound there. Now I'm going to paraphrase it here. It's like we're trying to get out of this life.
Yeah.
That's kind of paraphrasing what you said. And what I have found is, well, there's only one way out, and that's in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have to go inside. And really, once you go inside, you realize there is no out anyway. Out is an illusion. Once you go inside and you become connected, and I love the way you phrase it. You refer to this as the one who is doing the observing, the one who is doing the experiencing, and rather than the one who's thinking about it all. And I love that. And I see that happening in me a lot, all the time now. I'm connected more and more to that quiet voice within. And it's guiding me in my life in ways that it never did. Well, I'm sure it's always been guiding me. It's just that I never listened. That's more accurate.
Yes.
I was so busy with the ego stuff going on.
I agree with that. And that when we align with that part of ourselves, that is always guiding us, as you were saying, it is guiding us through a process. Now, it depends on how mystical, metaphysical you want to get, but there is a choice to have this life experience. And this life experience is we decide to have it for a reason, so that we can experience everything that is before us. And coming to know that part of us that is that eternal aspect of ourselves is where we come to know our invulnerability, our strength, our power, our connection to all that is. This is where the fears begin to fall away, because there is a visceral knowingness of what we are. And then there's an alignment with, well, heck, if I came to have this life experience, if this is where I am, let me make peace with where I am and let me enjoy it. Let me have this life be a second to second, moment by moment peak experience, and take it all in. Take it all in.
Yeah. Well, okay. So one of the things that I did promise my readers about this episode is I want to talk about this intentional mechanism for getting back into flow on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I see 4 steps to this.
Okay.
And the first step is having some clarity of your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
That is understanding your reasons for doing what you're doing, knowing your why, ensuring your objective is aligned with who you really are, not with who you think you are. Now, we'll talk about these bit by bit, but I want to go through them all first. The second one is intense focus. So you want to bring yourself and commit yourself fully to that chosen goal, and bring all your attention into completing the task in the way that only you can do it. And then the third item is called authentic power, and that is calling upon the ever-present power of the universe to flow through you and guide you to the completion of your task.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, and this is the most important one, and you already mentioned it, gratitude and appreciation. So remaining aware of everything that's going on in and around you, and allowing yourself to just simply bask in the glory of that and just enjoy it for what it is. So those are the 4 steps, I think, to bringing yourself intentionally into focus. What do you think about those?
Yeah, I was taking a couple of notes, because it is. So let me do a quick little summary. So one is the purpose, one is the focus, one is our authentic power, bringing that to it, and the other one is the gratitude for it.
Yes.
I think that those are very, very, you know what, even though you're listing them out, they are organic. They happen organically. When we are in the space of listening to the ego mind, and we're doing things out of fear, I got to figure out my purpose, and I've got to focus, and I got to make it happen. And instead of using our authentic power, we're going to use force. We're going to, push our way through to achieve this. There's no gratitude involved, because you're not even present. Gratitude is a sign of presence. And to be able to be in your authentic power, there is nothing you have to force. And when you're not forcing anything, you're fully focused, because your attention is on what is before you. And when you align with the soul of who we are, there is a knowingness of what our purpose is. So to give you an example, when I started this spiritual journey, I was a realtor. I was really good at it. I was doing and having all the things I needed to do. I was making all the money. I had the plaques, the awards, the trophies, everything you could want. I was on the leadership board, blah, blah, blah. And then I began to go through my spiritual journey, and I began to hear a voice inside of me tell me that I am going to become a spiritual teacher. And I'm going, I don't even want to have anything to do with spirituality. I was one of those jaded people from religion. I didn't even want to do that. But it was a very, very clear voice that kept saying me, no, this is what you're going to do. But you're going to be supported. Everything is going to be given to you. And I'm listening to this voice in my head going, shut up. I got goals. I got my 5-year money goals here. So what you're talking about, when it happens organically, those are really, there's no better 4 steps. But until it happens organically, what beautiful steps to have to follow while we're learning to not force things, while we're learning to be present to what is, while we're learning to flow. So let's say one of your purpose is to be I'll use mine. Purpose was my God-given, source-given purpose to become a teacher of this spirituality. Well, I've been doing this now for 13 years, but somewhere in the middle of that, I remarried and my marriage became very, very contentious. Because at the same time, I had my youngest son going through what I call a drug adventure. Those things were not what I had planned for my life. And here I am, this teacher of spirituality, teaching people how to come inside and get centered and forgive what's happening. And I've got stuff that's happening in my life that didn't align with my purpose. So I began to realize that my purpose was to flow with what was happening. And I began to realize that my purpose is not to be a spiritual teacher. My purpose is to be present to whatever is happening. If it's being a mom, being a coach, being a teacher, being a realtor, being a retired person. So the purpose of the why became very simple.
Right.
It was for me to be present to what was happening. Why? Because it's fun. Why? Because I'm there. Why? Because there is something in me that wants to extend itself to whatever is happening. And that's where the focus, it becomes so easy, because when you're sharing from what feels good, what you're extending from what's inside of you, it's fun, it's easy, it's enjoyable, and that's authentic. And of course, you're going to be grateful for that.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things you said just reminded me of a teaching that I got some time ago, and it just completely resonates with me. And that is, I teach that which I most need to learn. And I think that's a beautiful way of just of bringing it. So your God-given source message was that you were going to teach spirituality, and precisely. And so in your own heart, in your own soul, that was a part that your essence knew that you needed to learn. And I've had the same experience. I mean, well, not exactly the same experience, of course, but a very, very similar experience in that, I was jaded by religion just as you were, and I had my decisions, and I kind of stay away from it all. But spirituality, absolutely. There's definitely no question in my mind that we are all connected, that we're all one, that we're just part of one big, ginormous blob of consciousness. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing when I see that, because it means, well, not just because of this, but one thing it means is that there is no energy form anywhere that is more important than any other.
Exactly.
Every single energy form in the universe has an equal importance in the universe, its place in the universe. And without it, that universe would not be what it is now. And that's true for each of us, too. So it's something that we all need to embrace. We need to embrace, I'm important, but I'm no more important than you are. Mm-hmm. And you're no more important than I am. It's just something that we have to understand about each other. But because of that, one thing I tell people is there's nobody more important than you are. And sometimes that goes to their ego, and they kind of say, oh, yeah, that means I'm the most important person around. That's not what it means at all. But yeah, so it's something that we need to wake up to. And if we can wake up to it and get to the essence of who we really are, then this flow will just, as you say, will happen organically. And and when it begins to happen, it might happen a little sporadically at first. It might be because your ego mind is still kind of chattering and getting in the way. It just takes practice. Just keep doing it. Keep doing it. It's not about fake it till you make it. It's just about keep trusting that the universe is going to give you ways of being in the flow.
Yeah, beautifully said. It is a practice. It's no different than, Tiger Woods, who just recently won the Masters. Here is a guy who was at the top of the golf world not too long ago, several years back. And, his life went through lots of changes. His time at the top dips. Well, he didn't get back to that place by not practicing. So here is somebody who had won that many, many times and was the best skilled golfer in the world. Well, he still has a golfing coach. He still has probably several, one for this stroke, one for that stroke, one for this, whatever or the other.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And that is something that is so challenging for people to understand. I know I see that with my clients is they say, well, I want to have the peace that you have. And I'm like, well, then do the freaking work that I've done. And
good for you.
You know,
exactly.
Well, like, are you going to come to this workshop that I'm giving? Are you going to practice the steps that in this book that we're studying together? Because I teach A Course in Miracles and it lays out the steps beautifully. Oh, I'm too busy tonight. I can't do it right now. I can't, blah, blah, blah. I got to go do this. I got to do that. So we have a monkey mind that keeps us very distracted from coming inside. But the shift happens, the magic happens when we make a commitment to come and get to know who are we inside, because inside is the essence that has our goals, that has our purpose, that has the ability to be grateful, that has everything that is necessary for the fulfillment of a life that is truly filled to the max with peak moments, which are all those ordinary moments, so that you can feel like you have lived your life on purpose. And it requires an incredible amount of work. I didn't get to peace without a heck of a whole lot of investigating of all the suffering that blocked my ability to be at peace. And so you can take these 4 steps and be present to your spiritual practice, or to be present to golfing, or to be present to the car accident. I mean, they all fit. They're perfect.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Laina. I think I just want to leave it here because we've come to a really nice stopping point, and I just want to thank you so much for being with me again. It's always a joy to share space with you, and to just toss ideas back and forth, and to watch where the flow takes us. It's magical. So thank you for being here, and thank you all to participating in today's program. You can watch all the recordings over on my website at lifemasterytv.com. That is life-mastery-tv.com. And as you go through your week, I invite you to remember the Life Mastery mantra. Gratefully forgive the imperfect being you have been in the past. Gratefully accept the magnificent being you are right now. And gratefully welcome the evolved being you are becoming in each new moment. Until we meet again, I am David McLeod, your Life Mastery Coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your journey. See you next time.
Bye. Thank you.